The ship drifted quietly through the endless black of deep space. Outside the thick windows, only stars sparkled like tiny diamonds scattered on a dark cloth. Inside, the crew of the Explorer sat tensely, staring at blinking consoles and listening to the low hum of machines. This was supposed to be a routine mission, a trip to chart the outer edge of their star system, but none of them knew that soon their lives would change forever. Captain Mira Alvarez sat in her chair at the front of the bridge. Her hands were steady, but her eyes showed a mix of worry and determination. Around her, the crew worked quickly, following the usual checks and procedures. They were hundreds of light years from Earth, in a place where no help would come soon. Everything depended on them. Suddenly, alarms began to blare. A red light flashed above the console, and the voice of the ship's computer announced a warning. Warning! Extreme space weather detected, unstable plasma storm approaching. Mira's heart beat faster. She called out to her crew. All hands, prepare for emergency protocols, shields up, secure all loose equipment. The storm was worse than any they had seen before. Outside the windows, glowing clouds of charged particles twisted and danced, in dangerous patterns. The ship trembled as the storm's energy hit it again and again. Inside, the crew felt the violent shakes. Machines beeped and warned of failures. The ship's engines struggled against the fierce winds of plasma. The storm was not just a natural space event, it was a killer. The communications officer, a young man named Liam, tried to keep calm. Captain, our long-range communications are down. We can't reach Earth or any nearby stations. Mira nodded slowly, her mind racing. Can we send a distress signal? Liam pressed buttons frantically. Yes, but it will be weak. We don't know if anyone will get it. The ship rocked harder. The lights flickered. A loud bang echoed through the halls as something large hit the ship's side. The crew gasped. Engineer Sarah ran to her station. Captain, the main engines are failing. We are losing power fast. Mira stood up, her voice strong. We need to get out of the storm before it tears us apart. Any ideas? Sarah shook her head. The engines are damaged. We can't move. Panic started to rise, but Mira kept her voice steady. We will fix it. Work on emergency repairs. Everyone stay calm and do your jobs. The crew worked as fast as they could. Sarah and her team crawled through narrow corridors to reach the engine room. Sparks flew from broken wires. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. Outside, the storm's fury grew stronger. Time passed slowly. The ship groaned like a living thing in pain. Crew members helped each other, offering water and words of hope. But deep down, fear was growing. Suddenly, another loud crash shook the ship. A warning light flashed. The hull was breached in the cargo bay. Mira's face turned pale. Seal the cargo bay immediately. Get everyone away from there. But the damage was severe. Air hissed out of the breach. Crew members rushed to close the emergency doors. Liam looked at the sensors and said, Captain, we are losing atmosphere in Section 3. If it reaches the living quarters, people won't survive. Mira's heart pounded. Seal all bulkheads, everyone. Put on oxygen masks now. The crew obeyed quickly, some coughing from the sudden loss of air pressure. The storm outside continued to batter the ship. It felt like a battle between a tiny boat and a giant ocean storm. Hours passed. The crew was exhausted, but still alive. They gathered in the safe sections of the ship, hoping for a miracle. Mira went to the communication console. Again, she tried one last time to send a distress signal. This is the Explorer deep space mission. We are stranded. Need help. Anyone, please respond. Static was the only answer. The crew listened in silence, waiting, hoping. Days felt like weeks. Food and water were running low. The ship's temperature dropped. The engines were cold and dead. Some crew members started to lose hope. One night, while Mira was checking the ship's status, the sensors suddenly beeped. Something was moving outside the ship. She looked at the screen. A faint, slow signal appeared. It was too weak to identify clearly. Liam, do you see this? Yes, Captain, something is out there. Mira's voice was firm but hopeful. Prepare for contact. We may have found help. But the signal faded again, lost in the endless dark. The crew waited, watching the stars and the empty space. Days later, when they were almost out of hope, the ship's alarms rang loudly. The crew rushed to the bridge. On the screen was a large silhouette of a ship. It was unlike anything they had seen before. Strong, powerful, and clearly armed. Mira's eyes widened. A human warship? The crew stared in shock and wonder. The warship moved closer, slowly docking with the explorer. The doors opened, and a team of humans in advanced armor entered. They were strangers, but their presence was a promise of life. Mira smiled faintly. We are saved. But the rescue was just the beginning. The strange warship hung close to the explorer like a guardian from another world. Its shape was sharp and powerful, and its metal surface gleamed softly under the distant stars. The crew of the explorer stared in awe and disbelief. They had never seen a ship like this before, a human warship, but unlike any they had known. Captain Mira Alvarez stood on the bridge, her eyes never leaving the new ship. She felt a mix of relief and caution. This help was unexpected, and she knew that nothing in deep space came without a price. Her crew gathered behind her, whispering in low voices. Questions filled the air like sparks. Who were these people? Why had they come? And what dangers might still be waiting? A voice came through the comms. It was calm and clear, but carried the weight of experience. Explorer, this is the warship Valkyrie. We received your distress call. Prepare for boarding. Mira took a deep breath. This is Captain Alvarez. We are ready to receive your crew. Minutes later, the docking clamps locked and the airlocks opened with a soft hiss. A group of humans stepped inside. They wore sleek suits with glowing panels and carried small devices that seemed far advanced from anything the Explorer crew had. The leader of the Valkyrie's team introduced himself. I am Commander Reed. We come from the United Earth Fleet. We have been hunting a threat that has followed us across several systems. Your signal brought us here. Mira's brow furrowed. What kind of threat? Reed looked serious. A fleet of unknown ships has been attacking settlements and explorers. We barely escaped. You're lucky we came when we did. The crew exchanged worried looks. The vast emptiness of space suddenly felt much darker. The rescue was real, but danger was close. As the Valkyrie's crew began repairs on the Explorer, Mira walked with Reed through the ship's corridors. The two captains spoke quietly. We could not respond earlier because our communications were jammed, Reed explained. This enemy uses advanced technology to hide their movements and block messages. Mira nodded. We felt alone. It was terrifying. Reed looked out the window. You are not alone anymore, but this fight will test all of us. Back on the bridge, Liam and the communications officer from the Valkyrie worked together. They tried to restore links to Earth and nearby allies. Suddenly, the screen flickered. A small blip appeared far ahead, moving fast. Liam's eyes widened. Commander, something is coming. The room filled with tension. The crew prepared for whatever was approaching. Reed smiled faintly. Good. We are ready. The blip grew larger on the screen. It was not a friendly ship. Mira gripped the edge of her chair. What do we do? Reed's voice was calm but firm. We stand and fight if we must, but first we try to outsmart them. For hours, both crews worked side by side. Repairs on the Explorer continued, while the Valkyrie prepared for battle maneuvers. Everyone felt the weight of the moment. Survival depended on teamwork, trust, and courage. During a break, Sarah, the engineer, spoke to one of the Valkyrie's tech specialists. Your technology is amazing. How do you keep the warship running in this dangerous space? The specialist smiled. Years of hard work and learning from every challenge. Space is full of surprises. We must be ready for anything. Sarah nodded, slowly, thinking about their own damaged ship and the long road ahead. Night came, but in deep space, night was just a word. The stars never slept, and the threat was always near. Suddenly, alarms sounded. The blip was not alone. More ships appeared, closing in fast. The crews rushed back to their stations. Lights flashed, screens beeped, and the hum of engines grew louder. Mira took a deep breath. Hold your positions. We face this together. Reed's voice came over the comm. Stay calm. Focus on what you know. We will protect you. The unknown ships were close now, but the Valkyries' advanced sensors found weak points in their formation. Together, the crews worked to outmaneuver the enemy. The tension was thick. Every second felt stretched. No one spoke except for quick commands and updates. Suddenly, the enemy ships changed direction and sped away. Relief washed over the room, but it was brief. Reed looked at Mira with seriousness. This was only a warning. They will come back. Mira nodded. Then we prepare. We cannot run. The crews spent the next hours repairing, planning, and sharing stories. Bonds formed between strangers in the cold vastness of space. Hope returned, but so did the weight of the unknown. Outside the windows, deep space stretched endlessly. The stars were silent witnesses to the beginning of a long and dangerous journey. The rescue was real. The danger was real. And the fight for survival had only just begun. The cold emptiness of space stretched endlessly beyond the windows as the crews of both ships prepared for what was coming. The warning from the unknown ships weighed heavily on every mind aboard the Explorer and the Valkyrie. Captain Mira Alvarez stood firm on the bridge, watching the stars with sharp eyes. The silent darkness held secrets and danger. She knew that running was not an option. They had to face this challenge head-on. Commander Reed was beside her, calm and focused. Their next move will be smarter, he said quietly. They have watched us, they know we are here, we must be ready for anything. Mira nodded. Our people are tired. Supplies are low. We need a plan that does not just keep us alive but gives us hope. The crew worked together, combining their skills and knowledge. The Valkyrie's technology was advanced and powerful, but the Explorer's crew knew their ship's layout and hidden spaces better than anyone. They began to prepare the ship for a long defense. They checked every system, fixed weak points, and made sure everyone knew where to go if things went wrong. In the mess hall, small groups gathered quietly. Conversations were low, filled with questions about the enemy and what might come next. Sarah, the engineer from the Explorer, sat with one of the Valkyrie's technicians. How do you keep your ship ready for such long fights? She asked. The technician smiled, shaking his head slightly. You never stop learning. Space teaches hard lessons. We always look for new ways to protect our crew. Sarah thought about the storm that had nearly destroyed their ship and the many small failures that almost ended their mission. We have to be better, stronger. Outside, the stars twinkled like distant eyes watching their every move. The silent void was full of unseen dangers. Suddenly, the sensors picked up movement. It was not just one ship, but a fleet. Small but fast ships appeared on the scanners, moving closer. The unknown enemy was back, and they came with more numbers. The crews rushed to their stations. The Valkyrie's crew operated their advanced systems while the Explorer's crew focused on what they knew best, using every corner of their ship for defense. Mira's voice was steady but firm. Hold your positions, use every resource. We will protect this ship and each other. The enemy ships approached with speed, surrounding the combined forces. Their movements were quick and careful, as if they were testing the defenses before a larger attack. Reed studied the scanner. They are probing our shields, looking for a weakness. The crews worked as one, strengthening shields, readying escape routes, and preparing for a fight that was not about weapons but about survival and strategy. Time stretched. Every second was heavy with tension. The enemy ships moved closer, then suddenly pulled back as if to strike a different target. It was a game of cat and mouse, each side learning the other's moves. During a quiet moment, Mira spoke to her crew. This is not just a battle for us. It is a test of our will. We fight not just to survive, but to show that humanity does not give up. The crew nodded, their fear replaced by determination. Then, the enemy launched a new tactic. Small drones appeared, moving quickly toward the ships. They were not weapons but interference devices, designed to confuse sensors and block communications. The crews had to act fast. The Valkyrie's specialists worked to counter the interference, while the explorer's crew used manual controls and old-fashioned teamwork to keep the ship moving. Liam, the communications officer, shouted over the noise. "We are losing contact with Earth. All long-range channels are blocked." Mira clenched her fists. "Keep trying. We cannot lose hope." Suddenly, the drones stopped. The enemy ships pulled away again, disappearing into the blackness. Relief was short-lived. Reed's voice was grave. "They are testing us. This was a warning. They will return with more." The crews used the time to repair systems and share information. A new understanding grew between them. They were no longer two separate groups, but one team facing a greater challenge. Sarah discovered something unusual during repairs, a strange device left behind by the enemy drones. It was small but powerful, capable of blocking signals across a wide area. She showed it to Reed. "If we can understand how this works, maybe we can turn it against them." Reed smiled, hope flickering in his eyes. "Good work, Sarah. This could change everything." As the crews worked through the night, plans grew for a future battle, one that would test their courage, their minds, and their faith in each other. Outside, the stars watched silently as the human warship and the stranded explorers prepared to face the darkness together. The fight was far from over. It had only just begun. The vast silence of space seemed heavier now. Days had passed since the last warning from the unknown fleet, but no one aboard the Explorer or the Valkyrie felt safe. The crews moved quietly through the ships, their faces lined with exhaustion and worry. Every small sound, the hum of engines, the blink of a console light, reminded them of the fragile thread by which their lives hung. Captain Mira Alvarez stood by the window, staring at the dark stretch beyond. Stars blinked calmly, unaware of the storm gathering around them. She clenched her hands and thought of her crew, people who had become like family in the cold, endless void. She had promised them safety, and she would keep that promise. Commander Reed approached, his step steady but his expression serious. "Captain, we've completed analysis of the device Sarah found. It's a signal jammer, but far more advanced than anything we've seen before. It can disrupt communications and sensor readings over a large area." Mira nodded slowly. "That explains why we lost contact with Earth. We're blind out here." Reed looked out the window with a hard gaze. "And the enemy has been watching us closely. They know what they're doing." Inside the engine room, Sarah worked alongside Valkyrie technicians, studying the jammer's complex design. "If we can reverse engineer this, maybe we can build a countermeasure," she said, her voice full of quiet hope. "It won't be easy, but it's our best chance." As the teams worked, the tension on the ships grew heavier. Small incidents began to happen: power flickers, sensor glitches, even strange noises in the air ducts. Some crew members whispered about the ships being haunted by the vast emptiness outside. But Mira and Reed knew better. This was a test of endurance, and every moment counted. One evening, as the two captains met in the common room, Mira shared her thoughts. "We cannot just wait for them to strike. We need to find out more about who we're facing." Reed nodded. "Agreed. We're sending out scout drones. They'll move silently beyond our sensor range and send back any information." The crews watched nervously as the drones launched into the starry void. Hours passed with no news. Then, a faint signal returned. The drones had found something, a small cluster of ships hiding behind an asteroid belt. Mira leaned closer to the screen. "They're using natural cover to avoid detection. Clever." Reed's voice was low but firm. "This gives us an opportunity. We can plan a careful approach, gather more intelligence." As the crews prepared for the risky mission, Sarah worked late into the night on the jammer countermeasure. The room was filled with quiet hums of machines and the scratch of her tools. She knew that success meant more than survival. It meant hope. The next day, the crews gathered for a briefing. Reed explained the plan. Small teams would pilot stealth drones into the asteroid field to study the enemy's positions and movements. It was dangerous but necessary. Mira's eyes scanned the room. Everyone must be ready for anything. We depend on each other. The drones slipped silently into the shadows of the asteroids. Their cameras showed the enemy ships moving like shadows themselves, fast, careful, and mysterious. Suddenly, one drone sent back an image that made the crew hold their breath. It showed a strange symbol on the enemy ships, a symbol that looked familiar but twisted in a way no one could place. "What does that mean?" Liam asked, his voice tight. Reed shook his head. "We don't know yet, but it tells us they are organized and possibly part of something larger." As the drones returned safely, the crews gathered to analyze the data. They learned more about the enemy's tactics and strength, but also about their weaknesses, small gaps in their formations and slow response times to surprise attacks. Mira smiled faintly. "We can use this." The crews began preparing traps and defenses based on the new information. They worked together side by side, blending their strengths and knowledge. At night, as the stars glittered coldly outside, the crews shared stories of home, dreams, and the future they fought for. Hope grew quietly among them, a small light in the darkness. But deep space held many secrets, and the enemy was still watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The fight was far from over. It was only becoming more real. The quiet after the last encounter was unsettling. The crew aboard the Explorer and the Valkyrie moved with a new sense of urgency, as if the very air held whispers of the danger lurking beyond their view. "Captain." Mira Alvarez stood at the command window, her eyes scanning the endless stars, searching for any sign of the enemy. The stars seemed peaceful, but she knew better. Darkness could hide many things. Commander Reed joined her silently. "They're not gone. They're waiting for the right moment," Mira nodded. "And so are we." Inside the ship, the crew worked tirelessly. The countermeasure device that Sarah and the Valkyrie's technicians had developed was ready for testing. It was a delicate balance, a technology that could block the enemy's jamming signals and restore their own communications and sensors. Sarah's hands moved carefully as she activated the device for the first time. Lights flickered, screens blinked back to life, and a quiet buzz filled the air. "It's working," she said, her voice trembling with relief. On the bridge, Liam monitored the sensors. "We're picking up signals again. Earth and nearby. Allies are responding. We're not alone." The crew exchanged smiles, but the celebration was brief. The restored communications brought more than just hope. They brought warnings. The enemy fleet was larger than anyone had guessed. Several nearby systems had already been affected. The threat was real and spreading. Mira's voice was steady as she addressed the crew. "We must be ready for anything. Our home is in danger, and we are the shield between the enemy and those who cannot defend themselves." Reed worked on strategy with his officers. They studied the enemy's movements, looking for patterns and weaknesses. The fleet was cautious but confident. They had technology and experience, but the enemy had numbers and surprise. The first test came suddenly. Sensors detected a small group of enemy ships moving swiftly toward the fleet's position. The crews prepared for a defensive maneuver, but this time the fight was different. The enemy ships did not attack directly. Instead, they attempted to surround and isolate the Explorer and the Valkyrie. Mira's voice cut through the tension. "Keep calm. Use the environment. We know these ships. We can outthink them." The crews worked together, using the asteroid belt nearby to create barriers and confusion. The enemy ships slowed, unable to move freely through the dense field. Sarah guided the countermeasure device, aiming to disrupt the enemy's communication and coordination. The devices aboard the enemy ships began to flicker and malfunction. Reed's voice was firm. "They are losing control. Keep the pressure." The enemy ships, frustrated and confused, withdrew. The crews breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the victory was small and temporary. Later, during a quiet moment, Mira spoke to her crew. "This battle is about more than survival. It is about who we are, our courage, our unity, and our will to protect what matters." The crew nodded, feeling the weight and hope of her words. Sarah approached Mira quietly. "Captain, we found Something in the enemy's data. Plans, coordinates, and a message. Mira looked closely at the screen. The message was simple but chilling, a warning and a promise. The enemy would return with more, and they would not stop until the stars themselves were silent. The crews worked through the night, preparing for the next wave. They repaired their ships, trained harder, and strengthened their bonds. New friendships formed, and old fears began to fade. Liam, standing by the communications panel, smiled as he sent messages to Earth. "We're not alone. Help is coming." Outside the window, the vast emptiness waited. The stars shone coldly, but among the light, a small flame of hope burned bright, the human spirit refusing to be extinguished. The fight was not over. It had only just reached a new beginning. The quiet hum of the ships was a fragile comfort. The crews of the Explorer and the Valkyrie moved with purpose, every step measured and steady. Outside, the stars seemed indifferent, distant lights flickering in the vast dark. But inside, a sense of determination filled the air. This was the moment they had prepared for. The final stand that would decide not just their fate, but the future of many. Captain Mira Alvarez stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed beyond the vast emptiness. The enemy fleet was coming again, larger and more organized than before. But this time, the humans were ready. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. They were no longer stranded victims. They were a force to be reckoned with. Commander Reed approached, calm but resolute. "The reinforcements from Earth are almost here. We hold the line until they arrive." Mira nodded. "Then let's make sure we hold it." Inside the ship, the crew checked their stations one last time. Sarah ran diagnostics on the countermeasure device. "Everything's functioning at full capacity," she reported. "This will disrupt their communication and sensor interference during the battle." The atmosphere was tense, but filled with hope. The crew shared quiet words of encouragement. Memories of home, family, and the future they dreamed of kept their spirits strong. Suddenly, the sensors flared to life. The enemy fleet appeared, a dark shadow against the starry background. Their ships moved swiftly, but the humans were ready. Mira's voice was steady. "All hands, prepare for engagement. Stay focused, protect each other." The enemy ships advanced, their formation tight and precise. But the human ships used the asteroid field to their advantage, weaving through the rocky obstacles with agility and speed. The countermeasure device activated, sending waves of interference that scrambled the enemy's sensors and communications. Confusion spread among the enemy ranks. Reed coordinated the defense, directing the ships with calm efficiency. "Focus on keeping them separated. Don't let them group together." Small teams of drones flew ahead, scouting and disrupting the enemy's movements. The crews worked in perfect harmony, every action coordinated, every moment critical. The battle was a test of minds and willpower. No loud explosions, no reckless charges, only careful, strategic moves in the silent darkness. Mira watched as her crew responded with skill and courage. Their determination was clear. This fight was not just for survival, but for everything they held dear. Hours passed, the struggle continuing without rest. Slowly, the enemy's formation began to break. Ships pulled back, their confidence shaken by the unexpected resistance. Then a signal came through. The reinforcements had arrived. Human ships appeared from the distance, their lights bright. Against the void, Mira smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "We are not alone." The combined forces pushed the enemy fleet back, forcing them to retreat into the darkness once more. After the battle, the crews gathered to share relief and gratitude. They had survived the impossible, and their bond was stronger than ever. Sarah looked around at the tired but hopeful faces. "We prove that even in the darkest space, hope can shine," Mira agreed. "This is just the beginning. Together we will face whatever comes next." The stars outside continued their quiet watch, indifferent but beautiful. And within the human ships, a new light burned, the light of unity, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. The journey was far from over. but they had won a precious victory. The future waited among the stars, and the humans were ready to meet it.